Madeline Brownie pulled her heavy winter coat tighter around her shoulders as the wind cut through the narrow streets of Incheon like tiny frozen needles. She had been walking for 20 minutes, from the bus stop to her night shift at the 24-hour laundromat, the only job that would hire a woman from Cameroon with an expired student visa and a degree nobody in this country seemed to care about. The streets were almost empty. The temperature had dropped to -11, and even the street food vendors had packed up early. Madeline's boots crunched against the thin sheet of ice on the sidewalk. She kept her head down, her thick braids tucked under a wool hat, and counted the blocks left until she heard it. A small, sharp bawl, like a kitten, but not quite. Madeline stopped and turned her head toward the alley between a closed electronics shop and an old noodle restaurant. The cry came again, tiny, desperate, barely louder than the wind. She should have kept walking. She was already running late. Mr. Go at the laundromat docked her pay for every 5 minutes she missed. But something pulled her, something deep in her chest that she could never explain, and she stepped into the alley. There, sitting on a flattened cardboard box behind a dumpster, was a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 5. She was wearing a thin pink dress, a party dress, the kind with ruffles and a satin ribbon at the waist, and white shoes with tiny buckles. No coat, no hat, no gloves. Her small body was shaking so hard that her teeth made a rapid clicking sound, and her lips had turned a terrible shade of blue. So, Madeline dropped to her knees instantly. Oh no, no, no. Hey, little one, hey. The girl looked up. Her eyes were wide, red-rimmed, and full of tears that had frozen in tiny streaks down her round cheeks. She said something in Korean, fast, shaking, barely understandable. Madeline's Korean was functional at best. She understood cold and scared and where, enough to piece together that this child was lost, terrified, and minutes away from real danger. Okay, I've got you. Madeline didn't think twice. She unzipped her coat, the big, puffy, dark green one she had saved 3 months' worth of tips to buy, and wrapped it around the little girl like a cocoon. The coat swallowed her entirely. Only her small face peeked out from the top. The girl blinked, stared up at Madeline, then slowly, or like a flower opening after a long frost, she stopped shaking. There, Madeline whispered, her own body immediately punished by the vicious cold. She was now in nothing but a thin, long-sleeve shirt and jeans. The wind hit her like a wall of ice. But she didn't flinch. She had grown up in Douala, where the heat could melt the road, and she had survived worse things than a cold night. She survived being alone. She could survive this. What's your name? Madeline asked gently, pointing at herself. Madeline. Then she pointed at the girl. Seo-Yoon, the girl whispered. Seo-Yoon, pretty name. Madeline rubbed the girl's tiny hands between her own. Where are your parents? Yama? Appa? At the word Appa, Seo-Yoon's face crumpled, and fresh tears spilled over. She shook her head rapidly, babbling in Korean. Madeline caught fragments. Car, men, our running, dark, and her stomach tightened. This child hadn't wandered off from a birthday party. She had been running from something. Madeline pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked across the corner. Had been since she dropped it running for the bus 2 months ago. But it worked. She dialed the local police. The line rang, and rang, and rang. An automated message played in Korean. Something about high call volumes and waiting. You've got to be kidding me, Madeline muttered. She looked down at Seo-Yoon, who had burrowed deeper into the coat, and was now gripping Madeline's wrist with both tiny hands, as if letting go meant disappearing. She couldn't leave this child here. She couldn't stand in this alley in -11 weather with no coat, waiting for a phone line that might never pick up. And she definitely couldn't take a random child to her cramped, one-room apartment above a fish market without raising every red flag in the country. Think, Madeline, think. The convenience store, 3 blocks east. It was open all night. It was warm, and the owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Bake, had always been kind to Madeline. She would know what to do. "Seo Yun," Madeline said, crouching so they were eye to eye. "I'm going to carry you somewhere warm, okay?" Warm. Tatuthan God. The girl hesitated, then nodded. Madeline lifted her, she weighed almost nothing, and began walking fast, shielding the child from the wind with her own body. The cold invaded every part of her. Her fingers went numb within a minute. Her ears stung like someone was pressing hot needles into them. Her jaw locked tight to keep her teeth from chattering. But she kept walking. She made it to Mrs. Beck's store in 6 minutes. The bell above the door chimed as she pushed inside, and the blast of heated air hit her so hard her eyes watered. Mrs. Beck looked up from behind the counter, startled. Her eyes went from Madeline, shivering, coatless, with frost forming on her braids, to the tiny child, bundled in the oversized green coat. "Hey, Goo!" Mrs. Beck rushed around the counter. "What happened? Whose child is this?" Madeline set Seo Yun down on a chair near the heater. "I found her in the alley near the noodle shop. She's alone. She's scared. I tried calling the police, but the lines are always jammed on cold nights," Mrs. Beck said, already pouring warm barley tea into a paper cup and bringing it to Seo Yun. "On people calling about frozen pipes and car accidents." She looked at the girl closely. "This dress, this isn't a cheap dress." Madeline hadn't thought about that. But now that Mrs. Bayek mentioned it, the fabric of that party dress was silk, the shoes were real leather, and on Seo Yun's tiny wrist, half hidden by the coat sleeve, was a bracelet made of what looked like actual diamonds. A 5-year-old wearing diamonds, in an alley, alone. Mrs. Bayek's face changed. She went pale, then looked at Madeline with an expression that was no longer just concerned. It was afraid. "Madeline, where exactly did you find this child?" "Between the electronics shop and that old noodle place." "Why?" "That area. Those buildings. They belong to the Kwan family." Madeline stared. "Who?" "The Kwan family." Mrs. Beck's hands were trembling now. "Everyone in Incheon knows who they are. Kwan Tai-sik. He runs everything. Import, export, construction, real estate. But those are just the businesses people can see. Underneath," she trailed off, glancing at Seo Yun, who was sipping the tea with both hands. "Are you saying this girl belongs to a crime boss?" "Stop right here and drop your prediction. How does this story end? Use emojis, use words, whatever. Just guess before you keep watching. Subscribe so you're always first to see new stories, and come back to your comment later to see if you were right. The wildest prediction gets pinned. Now keep watching. You're about to find out if your gut was right." Mrs. Bayek grabbed Madeline's arm. "I'm saying you need to be very, very careful about what you do next. On if this is his daughter, if she was taken, or she ran from something, there will be people looking for her. Dangerous people. And when they find whoever has her..." The bell above the door chimed. Both women turned. 3 men walked in. They wore long black coats, and their faces could have been carved from stone. The one in front, tall, sharp jaw, a scar running from his left ear to his chin, scanned the store with the cold precision of someone who had been trained to find things. And people. His eyes landed on Seo Yun, then on Madeline, then back on Seo Yun. He pulled out a phone and said one sentence into it. "We found her." Everything after that happened too fast. The man with the scar stepped forward and spoke to Seo Yun in Korean, gentle, careful, the way you'd talk to a frightened animal. Seo Yun looked at him, and then looked at Madeline, then back at him. She didn't seem afraid of these men. She seemed relieved. She said one word. "Uncle." The man's expression didn't change, but something in his posture loosened. He knelt, opened his arms, and Seo Yun climbed off the chair and walked to him, still wrapped in Madeline's coat. One of the other men, shorter, stockier, with a buzz cut, looked at Madeline like she was a stain on the floor. He said something sharp in Korean to Mrs. Bayek, who immediately backed behind the counter, hands up. "Hey," Madeline said, stepping forward. "I'm the one who found her. She was alone in an alley in -11, with no coat, crying. I gave her my coat and brought her somewhere safe, so whatever attitude you're bringing in here, you can—" The scarred man raised a hand. The stocky one went silent. So he looked at Madeline, really looked at her, and for a long moment, the store was completely quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of the wind outside. "You gave her your coat," he said in English. His accent was thick but clear. "She was freezing. I wasn't going to watch a child die." He studied her a second longer. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a business card, plain white, black text, just a name and a phone number. Kwon Tae-sik. "He will want to meet you," the man said. It wasn't a request. Madeline took the card, read the name, and felt something cold run down her spine that had nothing to do with the weather. "I don't need a reward," she said. "I just did what anyone would do." The man almost smiled. "Almost. That is exactly why he will want to meet you," he said. "No one in this city does what anyone should do. Not anymore." He turned, and the three men left with Seo-yun, who looked back over the scarred man's shoulder and gave Madeline a small, shy wave. The door closed. The bell chimed once, then went still. Madeline stood there, coatless, shivering, holding a business card that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Mrs. Bayek stared at her from behind the counter. "Madeline, she whispered. "What have you gotten yourself into?" Madeline looked at the card again. Then she tucked it into her back pocket and headed for the door. "My shift started 10 minutes ago," she said quietly. "Mr. Go is going to dock my pay." She stepped back into the cold, the merciless, punishing cold, and walked the remaining 7 blocks to the laundromat, without a coat, without gloves, without anything but the stubborn fire that had kept her alive since the day she left Douala, with $200 and a one-way ticket to a country she had only seen in television dramas. She didn't know it yet, couldn't possibly have known. But that business card in her back pocket was about to change everything. Not slowly, not gently, like a hurricane. 3 days passed. Madeline didn't call the number. She told herself it was because she was busy. Double shifts at the laundromat, then 2 hours of tutoring English to high school students on the side, then falling asleep at her tiny desk with her face pressed against a vocabulary workbook. She told herself it was because the card was probably nothing. A polite gesture from a man who had more important things to worry about than a foreign woman who lent a coat. But the truth she didn't say out loud, not even to herself, was that she was afraid. Everyone knew what the word Mafia meant. She had seen the movies. She had heard Mrs. Bayek's voice shake when she said the name Kwon. And she had seen the way those 3 men walked into that store, like they owned the air inside it. So she didn't call. On the 4th day, the call came to her. It was 7 in the morning. Madeline had just finished her overnight shift and was peeling off her work apron when her phone lit up. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Telemarketers, probably. But something made her answer. "Miss Brownie?" A woman's voice. Calm, professional, speaking English with a crisp Korean accent. "Yes." "My name is Director Shin. I am the personal assistant to Mr. Kwon Tae-sik. So we would like to invite you to his residence this afternoon at 2 o'clock. A car will be sent to your location. May I confirm your address?" Madeline's grip tightened on the phone. "How did you get my number?" A brief pause. "Mr. Kwon has many resources, Miss Brownie. He also asked me to inform you that your coat has been cleaned and will be returned to you today, along with a small token of his gratitude." I told the man, his guard, or whatever, that I don't need a reward. Mr. Kwon is aware. He would still like to meet you. It is regarding his daughter, Seo-yun. She has been asking for you. That stopped Madeline cold. Seo Yun was asking for her? She thought of that tiny face peering out from the coat. That shy wave over the man's shoulder. Those frozen tear tracks on round cheeks. 2 o'clock? Madeline heard herself say. 2 o'clock. The car will arrive at 1:30. Please dress comfortably. And Miss Brownie. Yes? Thank you. For what you did. Not everyone would have stopped. The line went dead. Madeline stood in the back room of the laundromat, staring at the phone. Her reflection stared back from the dark screen. Tired eyes, dry lips, a face that carried more worry than any 26-year-old should. She had exactly 5 hours to figure out what you wear when you're meeting the most powerful criminal in Incheon. The car that arrived at 1:30 was not a car. It was a black SUV the size of a small apartment, with tinted windows so dark they looked like polished obsidian. A driver in a suit stepped out and opened the door for Madeline without a word. She climbed in. The interior smelled like new leather and mint. There was a bottle of water in the door holder, a small box of premium chocolates on the seat, and a garment bag hanging from a hook, inside which was her green coat, cleaned, pressed, and looking better than it had the day she bought it. Madeline put the coat on. It was warm. It was hers. And for some reason, having it back made her feel braver. The drive took 40 minutes. They left the city, climbed into hills she didn't know existed, passed through 2 security gates with guards who waved the SUV through without checking, and finally arrived at a house that... No, not a house. That word was an insult to what she was looking at. It was an estate, a sprawling, modern structure of steel and glass and dark stone that sat on the hillside like a crown on a king's head. Perfectly manicured gardens surrounded it, so a fountain, an actual fountain, sat in the circular driveway, water somehow still flowing despite the freezing temperatures. The entire property was enclosed by walls she couldn't see over. Lined with cameras, she pretended not to notice. The driver opened her door. "This way, please." Madeline stepped out, clutching her bag, a worn canvas thing she'd had since university, and followed the driver up a wide stone staircase to a set of enormous double doors. They opened before she reached them. Standing on the other side was a woman in a tailored gray suit, hair pulled back in a sleek bun, with the kind of posture that suggested she had never slouched a day in her life. "Miss Brownie, I'm Director Shin. Welcome." Madeline shook her hand. "Thank you. This place is a lot." Director Shin's mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile Madeline suspected she ever allowed. "It is. Please follow me." They walked through a foyer that could have held Madeline's entire apartment 4 times over. Through a hallway lined with art, not the mass-produced kind, but actual paintings, with texture and weight, and small brass plates with artist names she didn't recognize. Past a staircase that curved upward like a ribbon. Past 2 more men in suits who acknowledged Director Shin with tiny nods. Finally, they reached a set of glass doors that overlooked a garden. Director Shin stopped. "Mr. Kwan is inside. Seo Yun is with him. I should mention, Seo Yun has not spoken to anyone except her father and her uncle since the incident. She has been very quiet, very withdrawn. But this morning, she drew a picture of a woman in a green coat and asked her father to find her." Madeline's chest ached. She drew a picture. With crayons, she gave the woman in the picture very long braids. Director Shin looked at Madeline's hair. "It's a good likeness." She opened the glass door. Madeline stepped through and entered a sunlit room filled with plants, a low wooden table, and 2 figures sitting on a wide, cushioned bench near the window. One was Seo Yun, wearing a thick sweater, her legs tucked under her, coloring in a book. The other was a man. He was not what Madeline expected. She had imagined someone older, scarred maybe, loud, intimidating in the obvious way. Big arms, cold eyes, gold rings. The kind of villain she'd seen in dramas. Kwon Tai-sik was none of those things. He was maybe 32, 33. Lean, but not thin. There was a quiet strength in the way he sat, like someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. His hair was dark, slightly longer on top, pushed back from a face that was, and Madeline hated herself for noticing, striking. Not handsome in the way magazine models were handsome. Striking in the way a storm is striking. Something about his features, the sharp line of his jaw, the depth of his gaze, the stillness, made you want to look and keep looking. He was wearing a simple black shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms and dark trousers. No jewelry except a watch. No gold. No flash. He looked up when Madeline entered, and their eyes met. There was a silence. A real one, not awkward, not tense, just full. Like the room was holding its breath. Then Seo-Yun looked up. "The coat lady!" She launched off the bench like a rocket, crossed the room at full speed, and crashed into Madeline's legs with a hug so fierce it nearly knocked her sideways. "Coat lady! Coat lady! Coat lady!" Seo-Yun chanted, looking up with a grin so wide it took up half her face. Madeline laughed, a real, full laugh, the kind she hadn't let out in months, and crouched down to hug her back. "Hey, little one, you look a lot better than the last time I saw you. I drew you." Seo-Yun grabbed Madeline's hand and dragged her toward the bench. Come see! Come see!" Behind them, Kwon Tae-sik stood. He watched the woman, this stranger in a green coat, let his daughter pull her across the room, laughing, crouching to see a crayon drawing, telling Seo-Yun that the picture was beautiful and that the braids were perfect, when no one had made his daughter laugh in 11 months, not since her mother died, not once, until now. He straightened his watch, took a breath, then walked over. "Miss Brownie." Madeline stood, still holding Seo-Yun's hand. Up close, Kwon Tae-sik was even more intense. His voice was low, controlled, with a weight to it that made every word feel deliberate. "Mr. Kwon, I owe you a debt," he said. No smile, no small talk, just directness, clean as a blade. "You saved my daughter's life. The doctor said another 20 minutes in that temperature, and she would have had severe frostbite. Possibly worse. I just gave her a coat. You gave her your only coat. In -11. And then you walked to a warm place carrying her, without anything to protect yourself." He paused. Director Shin retrieved the security camera footage from the surrounding streets. "I saw the whole thing." Madeline blinked. "You watched security footage of me? I needed to understand what kind of person you are. And what did the footage tell you?" He held her gaze. "That you are either the bravest person in this city or the most reckless. I haven't decided which. Probably both," Madeline said, before she could stop herself. The corner of his mouth shifted. Not a smile. Something before a smile, like the preview of one. "Sit," he said. "Please. I would like to discuss something with you." They sat across from each other at the low table, while Seo-Yun colored between them, occasionally holding up her drawings for approval. Madeline complimented every single one, to even the one that was apparently a dragon, but looked more like a lumpy cloud with legs. Tea was brought by a quiet woman in an apron who appeared and disappeared like a ghost, and Tae-sik poured for them both. "I'll be direct," he said. "My daughter was taken from a private event 4 nights ago. A rival organization, people I have been in conflict with for years, used the occasion to send a message. They took her from the party, drove her across the city, and abandoned her in that alley." Madeline's blood ran cold. "They left a 5-year-old in an alley? In that weather? On purpose? To punish me, to show me that they can reach anyone I love." His jaw worked, and for the first time, Madeline saw something crack behind those controlled eyes. Not rage, something deeper. Fear. The kind only parents know. "Hey, if you hadn't found her." He stopped. Seo Yun held up a drawing of a cat. "Appa, look. Beautiful," he said, and his voice was so gentle when he spoke to his daughter that Madeline felt her chest tighten. He turned back to her. "I have increased security. I have dealt with the immediate threat. But Seo Yun, she has not been the same since her mother passed. She doesn't trust easily. She doesn't open up to the nannies, the tutors, anyone. She has nightmares. She barely speaks some days." He paused. "And then you appeared, a stranger. And she ran to you like she had known you her whole life." Madeline looked down at Seo Yun, who was now leaning against her arm while coloring, completely at ease. "What are you asking me, Mr. Kwan? I want to hire you, as Seo Yun's personal companion and caretaker. Full-time. You would live here, force in the guest wing. Your salary would be significant, and I would personally ensure that your visa situation is resolved." The room went quiet. You can do that," Madeline whispered. "The visa? Miss Brownie, there is very little in this country I cannot do." She believed him. That was the terrifying part. She believed every word. "I need to think about it," she said. This is a lot. Take 3 days. Director Shin will give you a number to call when you've decided." He stood, and the meeting was apparently over. But as Madeline rose and gently detached Seo Yun's hand from her sleeve, the girl whimpering a little at the separation, Tai-sik spoke again. "One more thing." "Yes. The people who took my daughter, they have not been fully dealt with. If you accept this position, then you should know that my world is not a safe one. There are risks, real ones." His eyes were unblinking. "I will protect you. That is my promise. But I want you to choose with your eyes open." Madeline held his gaze for a long, loaded moment. "Mr. Kwan, I moved to a country where I don't fully speak the language, with $200, an expired visa, and 0 connections. I've been doing laundry at midnight for 18 months to survive. I think I can handle a little risk." This time, he actually smiled. Small, brief, but real. 3 days, Miss Brownie. She lasted 1. Madeline moved into the Kwan estate on a Wednesday. Her room in the guest wing was bigger than her entire old apartment. It had a bed so wide she could roll 3 times without falling off, a window that looked out over a pine forest dusted with snow, a private bathroom with heated floors, and a closet that someone had already stocked with warm clothes in her exact size. She stood in the middle of it all and whispered, "What am I doing?" But then Seo Yun knocked on the door 20 minutes later, holding a stuffed rabbit and asking if Madeline would read her a story, and the question didn't seem to matter anymore. The first 2 weeks were an adjustment. Madeline learned the rules of the house quickly. Director Shin ran everything: schedules, meals, staff, security, with the precision of a military general. There were cameras everywhere except the private rooms. There were guards at every entrance, rotating in shifts. Deliveries were checked, visitors were screened, and nobody entered or left without Director Shin knowing. Ma-ta-sik himself was a ghost during the day. He left early, returned late, and spent most of his home hours in his private office on the 2nd floor, behind a door that even Director Shin knocked on before entering. Madeline saw him at breakfast sometimes, and at dinner when he was home, but their interactions were brief and formal. "Good morning, Miss Brownie." "Good morning, Mr. Kwan." "How is Seo Yun?" "She ate all her vegetables at lunch, and only threw 1 crayon today." Progress. Significant progress. And that was it. Polite. Distant. Professional. Like they were colleagues who happened to share a very large house and a very small girl. But Madeline noticed things. She noticed that Tai-sik always checked on Seo Yun before he left, even when it was 5 in the morning and she was still asleep. And he would stand in the doorway of her room for a minute, just watching her breathe, before pulling the door shut so quietly you'd think the hinges were made of air. She noticed that he kept a framed drawing, one of Seo Yun's messy crayon pieces, on his desk in the office. She saw it once when Director Shin sent her to deliver a file. She noticed that when Seo Yun laughed, really laughed, the kind that made her whole body shake, Tae-sik would stop whatever he was doing, even mid-sentence, even on the phone. He would stop and listen, and something would cross his face that was too raw, too private, too human for a man the world called a monster. Madeline noticed all of it, and she tried very hard not to care. Week 3 changed everything. It started with Seo Yun's nightmares. Madeline had been warned about them by the head housekeeper, the stern woman named Mrs. Yu. "She screams in her sleep," Mrs. Yu had said flatly. "Usually around 2 or 3 in the morning. Nothing helps. We've tried warm milk, music, everything. The therapist says it will pass in time." The first nightmare came on a Wednesday at 2:47 a.m. Madeline heard the scream through the wall, because her room was right next to Seo Yun's, by her own request, and was on her feet before she was fully awake. She ran to Seo Yun's room, pushed the door open, and found the girl sitting up in bed, eyes wide, tears pouring, shaking so hard the bed frame rattled. "Seo Yun! Seo Yun! Hey, I'm here! I'm right here!" Madeline climbed onto the bed and pulled the girl into her arms. Seo Yun clung to her, fingers digging into Madeline's shirt, and Madeline began to do the only thing she knew how to do when someone was scared. She sang, not a Korean song, not a lullaby from any book. She sang the song her mother used to sing to her back in Douala, when the storms came and the power went out, and the whole house would shake with thunder. A Douala folk song about a fish who swam upstream to find the moon, slow and rhythmic, with a melody that rose and fell like breathing. Seo Yun didn't understand the words. She didn't need to. The melody did the work, wrapping around her like a second blanket, smoothing the sharp edges of whatever nightmare had torn her from sleep. Within 4 minutes, she was asleep again. Madeline stayed. She held the girl all night, sleeping upright against the headboard, waking up with a stiff neck and a numb arm, and Seo Yun's head on her chest. She didn't know that Tae-sik had come to the door. She didn't know he had heard the scream too, and had run from his room at the end of the hall, had arrived at Seo Yun's door just in time to see Madeline pull his daughter into her arms and begin singing. She didn't know he had stood in the doorway for 10 minutes, listening, watching his daughter's body slowly stop trembling, watching this woman, this stranger who was no longer a stranger, hold his child like she was the most precious thing in the world. She didn't know he had stayed until the singing stopped, until both of them were asleep, until he was sure. She didn't know any of that, but it was the night everything shifted. After that, the nightmares came almost every night. And every night, Madeline was there. She learned to sleep lightly, one ear always tuned to the wall, ready to run. She built a routine, a warm cup of cocoa before bed, a story, always a story from Cameroon, because Seo Yun loved the animals and the colors. Then the song, the same song, always, and slowly, so slowly you almost couldn't see it happening, Seo Yun began to heal. She started talking more, not just to Madeline, but to Mrs. Yu, to the cook, to Director Shin, who, to everyone's shock, was seen smiling once. She started eating full meals without being coaxed. She started playing in the garden, building snowmen, chasing the estate cat, a fat orange thing named General, around the kitchen. And she started calling Madeline something new, not coat lady anymore. Unnie, big sister. The first time she said it, Madeline was braiding her hair in the sunroom. Seo Yun tilted her head back, looked up at Madeline with those enormous eyes and said, "Unnie, can we make cookies today?" Madeline's hand stilled, her vision blurred. She blinked hard, swallowed the knot in her throat and said, "Yeah, little one, we can make cookies." She did not cry. She absolutely did not cry. She cried, just a little, in the bathroom, where nobody could see. The shift with Tae-sik happened gradually, the way sunrise happens. So slow you don't notice until suddenly it's bright. He started coming home earlier. Not every day, but enough that Madeline noticed. He started eating dinner with them instead of in his office. He started lingering after meals, watching Seo-yun show him her drawings, listening to her chatter about what she and Unnie did that day. And he started talking to Madeline. Not about business, not about security or schedules or logistics. Real things, small things. Things that didn't belong in the mouth of a man who ran an empire. "Director Shin says you have a degree in environmental science," he said one evening, after Seo-yun had gone to bed. Madeline looked up from her tea. They were sitting in the sunroom, which she had begun thinking of as their sunroom, a dangerous thought. And the garden outside was white with fresh snow. "I do. From the University of Douala. For all the good it does me here." "Why did you leave Cameroon?" She paused. Not because the question was rude, his tone was genuinely curious, but because the answer was complicated in ways that didn't fit into small talk. "My father died when I was 19, she said quietly. "After that, things got difficult. For my mother, for my younger brothers. I came here on a student visa to study Korean and find work. The plan was to send money home. The visa expired. The work wasn't what I expected. And suddenly I was stuck. Stuck. Between going home with nothing and staying here with almost nothing." She shrugged. "I chose almost nothing. At least here, I could still send money." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Your mother. She raised you well." "She raised me to never walk past someone who needs help, even when it's inconvenient." Madeline tilted her head. "Even when the person who needs help happens to be the daughter of the most feared man in Incheon." "I'm not feared," Tae-sik said, and there was something in his voice, not defensiveness, something sadder. "I'm avoided. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Fear means people run because they think you'll hurt them. Being avoided means people stay away because they've decided you're dangerous before they've ever spoken to you." He looked at her. "You didn't avoid me. I didn't know who you were when I picked up your daughter. By the time I found out, it was a little late to run. And now that you know?" Madeline held his gaze. The room was warm. The snow was falling. Somewhere in the house, General the cat was probably knocking something off a table. "Now I think you're a man who checks on his daughter at 5 in the morning when she's still asleep, who keeps her crayon drawings in his office, who sat through a 40-minute tea party with stuffed animals last Tuesday without once looking at his phone." She set down her cup. "I've seen plenty of dangerous men, Mr. Kwan. Real dangerous men don't sit through tea parties." He stared at her. And for the first time since she'd met him, the wall behind his eyes, that careful, controlled, armored wall, cracked. Just a fraction, and just enough for her to see something real on the other side. "You may call me Tae-sik," he said quietly. "Then you should call me Madeline." "Madeline," he repeated, and the way he said it, careful, like he was learning the shape of each syllable, made something warm bloom in her chest that she knew she should ignore. She did not ignore it. That night, Madeline lay in her wide, comfortable bed, staring at the ceiling, and whispered to the dark. "This is a terrible idea, Madeline. A terrible, terrible, terrible idea." The dark, naturally, said nothing back, but she could still hear the way he said her name, and she fell asleep smiling, which is exactly when everything went wrong. The morning started like any other. Madeline woke at 6, checked on Seo-yun, still asleep, uncurled around her stuffed rabbit, and went downstairs to make breakfast. She had started cooking in the estate kitchen, despite Mrs. Yu's initial horror. Cameroonian food, ndole, puff-puff, roasted plantains, had become a strange favorite in the household. Even the guards, who Madeline had initially found intimidating, would linger near the kitchen when she cooked, pretending to check their phones while the smell of fried plantains filled the hallway. She was halfway through frying beignets when Director Shin appeared in the doorway. Not her usual composed self. Her face was tight, her phone clutched in both hands, and she was walking fast. "Madeline, we have a situation." Madeline set down the spatula. "What kind of situation?" "Immigration." The word hit like a brick. Well, someone, we don't know who yet, filed a report with the immigration office about an undocumented foreign national living at this address. An officer is scheduled to visit this afternoon. Madeline gripped the counter. "Tae-sik said he was handling my visa," he said. "The application is in process, but these things take time, and someone timed this report, deliberately, to cause maximum damage before the paperwork clears." Director Shin's voice was sharp, but not at Madeline, at the situation. This was coordinated. Someone close enough to know your status, your location, and the timeline of the application. Who would? That is what we're trying to determine. Mr. Kwan has been notified. He's on his way back now. On his way back from where? Director Shin hesitated. "A meeting in Jeju. Well, he left at 4 this morning. Jeju was an island, hours away by plane. He can't just... He's already on the plane, Madeline. He turned around the moment I called him." Madeline sank into a chair. The beignets sizzled unattended. Her mind raced. If the immigration officer came, if they found her without valid papers, she would be detained, deported, sent back to Cameroon with nothing, to a family she had been supporting from a distance for 2 years. And Seo Yun would wake up and Madeline would be gone, just like her mother, just like the night in the alley. Another person who disappeared. "That's not going to happen," Madeline said aloud, more to herself than to Director Shin. "I'm not disappearing on that little girl." "No," Director Shin agreed. "You're not. We have a plan. But you need to trust me." The plan was this. Director Shin had a contact at a law firm that specialized in immigration cases. They could file an emergency petition, something called a humanitarian protection request, based on Madeline's circumstances. It wasn't a guarantee, but it would legally prevent detention while the petition was reviewed. The lawyer was already drafting the paperwork, but they needed Madeline's documents. All of them. Her passport, her expired visa, her university degree, her employment records, everything. And most of those documents were in her old apartment, the one above the fish market, the one she hadn't been back to since she moved to the estate. "I'll go get them," Madeline said, already grabbing her coat. "You're not going alone," Director Shin said. She signaled, and the man with the scar, whose name Madeline had learned was Jae-won, appeared from the hallway. "I'll drive," Jae-won said. They took a smaller car this time, less conspicuous, and drove into the city in tense silence. Jae-won kept checking the mirrors. Madeline kept checking her phone. A message from Tae-sik. "I'm landing in 2 hours. Don't leave the estate." She typed back. "Already left. Getting my documents. Don't worry." His reply was instant. Madeline. Just her name. But she could feel the weight behind it. The frustration. The concern. The barely controlled urgency. She could practically hear his voice. She put the phone away and focused on the road. The apartment was exactly as she had left it. Small, cold, and smelling faintly of fish from the market below. Madeline dug through a cardboard box under her desk and found the folder with everything she needed. A passport, visa papers, degree certificates, her mother's letter of support. All of it. She was turning to leave when she noticed something wrong. The lock on her front door, the one she had closed behind her when she came in, was no longer latched. She hadn't unlocked it from the inside, which meant someone had opened it from the outside. "Jae-won?" she called toward the stairwell. No answer. Madeline's heart rate spiked. She grabbed the folder, held it tight against her chest, and stepped toward the door. She pulled it open and found herself face to face with a woman she had never seen before. The woman was Korean, maybe late 30s, beautiful in a polished, deliberate way. The kind of beauty that was maintained with precision and money. She wore a cream-colored coat, her hair was perfectly styled, and she was smiling. But the smile didn't reach her eyes, not even close. "So, you're the one," the woman said in English, looking Madeline up and down with an expression that managed to be both curious and dismissive. "The coat lady. Tae-sik's new project. Who are you?" Madeline's voice was steady, but every nerve in her body was firing. "My name is Yoon Se-ri. I'm Seo Yoon's aunt, her mother's sister." The smile sharpened. "And I think it's time we had a conversation about what you're really doing in my niece's life." They sat in a coffee shop 2 streets away, Madeline's choice, because she was not having this conversation in her cramped apartment, and she was not getting into this woman's car. Jae-won, who had been waiting by the vehicle and was visibly unhappy about this detour, stood outside the shop with his arms crossed, watching through the window. Se-ri ordered an espresso. Madeline ordered nothing. "Let me be direct," Se-ri said, stirring her coffee with a tiny spoon. "I know who you are. I know your visa is expired. I know Tae-sik is trying to fix that. And I know you've been living in his house for almost a month, playing nanny to my sister's daughter. I'm not playing anything. Tae-sik hired me to take care of Seo Yoon, and that's what I'm doing." "That's what you think you're doing." Se-ri leaned forward. "What you're actually doing is becoming very attached to a very wealthy, very powerful man's household. A man who, by the way, has a lot of enemies. And those enemies are now watching you. Is that a threat? It's a warning. From someone who actually has Seo Yoon's best interests at heart." Se-ri's eyes hardened. "I've been trying to get custody of my niece for a year. She belongs with family. Her mother's family. Not with him. And certainly not with a stranger he picked up off the street because she happened to do something kind." Madeline's jaw tightened. "Seo Yoon is happy. She's eating. She's sleeping through more nights than she isn't. She's talking again. Whatever opinion you have about me or about Tae-sik, that child is doing better. And I won't let anyone, family or not, pull me away from her just because it's politically convenient." Se-ri set down her spoon. Something flickered behind her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or a grudging respect she didn't want to feel. "You really care about her," she said. "Not a question. More than you know." A long silence. Then Se-ri stood, placed a business card on the table, elegant, expensive, and said, "The immigration report wasn't from me, Madeline, so I want you to know that. But I know who sent it. And the person responsible is a lot closer to Tae-sik than you think." She turned and left. Madeline stared at the card, then at the door, then at Jae-won through the window, who was already on his phone, probably calling Director Shin. Someone in Tae-sik's inner circle had reported her, someone close, and Madeline was going to find out who. Tae-sik landed at 1:47 p.m. He arrived at the estate at 2:23 p.m. The immigration officer arrived at 2:31 p.m. 8 minutes. They had 8 minutes. But in those 8 minutes, Tae-sik did something Madeline didn't expect. He didn't make calls. He didn't bark orders. He didn't throw his weight around or intimidate anyone. He walked into the house, found Madeline in the living room, where she was sitting with Seo Yoon on her lap, reading a book about a tiger who wanted to learn to dance. And he sat down next to them. "The lawyer filed the emergency petition 30 minutes ago," he said quietly, so Seo Yoon wouldn't hear. "The officer can ask questions, but they cannot remove you today. The petition gives you legal standing until the review is complete. And if the review doesn't go my way, it will. But if it doesn't, Madeline." He said her name the way he always did. Careful, deliberate, like each syllable mattered. "I don't lose the things I decide to protect." She looked at him. He looked at her. Seo Yoon turned a page and said, "The tiger is dancing now. Look." The doorbell rang. "I'll handle this," Tae-sik said and stood. "We'll handle this," Madeline corrected, standing beside him. He paused, then gave her a single firm nod. So they walked to the door together. The immigration interview lasted 45 minutes. It was professional, thorough, and entirely anticlimactic. The officer, a middle-aged man with glasses and a clipboard, reviewed Madeline's documents, confirmed the pending petition, asked a series of standard questions, and left with a polite bow. No detention. No drama. Just paperwork. But the damage was done in other ways, because the visit reminded Madeline of something she had been trying to forget, that she was, in every legal sense, temporary. That this life, this warm house, this incredible child, this man who said her name like it was a prayer, could be pulled away at any moment. And now she knew something else. Someone on the inside wanted her gone. That night, after Seo Yoon was asleep, Madeline found Tae-sik in his office. The door was open, a rare thing, and he was standing at the window, looking out at the dark garden, a glass of water in his hand. "I met someone today," Madeline said from the doorway. "Yoon Sae-ri." Tae-sik didn't turn, but his grip on the glass tightened. "She told me the immigration report came from someone close to you." Now he turned. His face was controlled, but his eyes were anything but. "She said that?" "She also said she's been trying to get custody of Seo Yoon." A muscle in his jaw worked. "Sae-ri has been a complication since my wife died. She believes Seo Yoon would be better off with her. She has filed 3 custody petitions, all denied." "And the immigration report?" "I will find out who made that report, Madeline. And when I do, don't." She stepped into the room. "Don't do whatever you're about to say. And I don't want someone hurt because of me. I want the truth, that's all." He set the glass down, looked at her for a long, long time. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met," he said. And the way he said it, not as a compliment, not as flattery, but as a fact, spoken with a kind of quiet bewilderment, like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, made Madeline's chest ache in a way that was becoming dangerously familiar. "I'll take that as a good thing," she said. "It is," he said. "It terrifies me, but it is." They stood there, 3 feet apart, in the amber light of his office, and the silence between them was so full, so loud, that Madeline could hear her own heartbeat. Then Seo Yoon screamed. Both of them ran. It wasn't a nightmare this time. Seo Yoon was standing at her window, pointing at the garden below, tears streaming. Man outside. Bad man. Tae-sik scooped her up with one arm and pulled out his phone with the other. "Jae-won, garden, now!" Madeline ran to the window and looked down. The garden was dark, lit only by the landscape lights along the stone paths, and there, just at the edge of the tree line, barely visible, was a figure, standing, watching. Then the figure turned and vanished into the pines. Alarms erupted across the estate. Lights flooded the grounds. Guards swarmed the garden within 90 seconds. Jae-won and his team swept the perimeter for an hour. They found nothing. No footprints, no trace, no sign that anyone had been there at all, except that Seo Yoon had seen someone. And Seo Yoon, who had barely spoken for months, who was only just beginning to trust the world again, was now sitting in Madeline's lap, shaking and refusing to close her eyes. "Don't go," she whispered, gripping Madeline's shirt. "Don't go, don't go, don't go." "I'm not going anywhere," Madeline said, holding her tight. "I promise. I'm right here." Over Seo Yoon's head, her eyes met Tae-sik's. He was standing in the doorway, phone in hand, face like thunder. But when he looked at Madeline, at this woman holding his daughter, keeping her safe, keeping her whole, the thunder broke. And beneath it was something so tender, it almost hurt to witness. He mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Madeline held his gaze and mouthed back. "Always." She sang the Douala song until Seo Yoon fell asleep. She sang it 3 times. And on the 3rd time, She could have sworn she heard Tai-sik humming along, quietly, roughly from the doorway, like he was trying to learn the melody, and like he wanted to carry it with him. The truth came out on a Sunday. It came, as most truths do, from an unexpected direction. Madeline was in the kitchen making plantains for Seo Yun's lunch when her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but this time, she answered without hesitation. After the past month, she had learned that unknown numbers in this world usually meant something important. Madeline Brownie? A man's voice, older, cautious. Who is this? My name is Officer Kang from the Incheon Immigration Bureau. I'm calling because I feel you should know something. The report that triggered our visit to the Kwan estate. I've been looking into it. Officially, anonymous tips don't require investigation into the source, but this one felt orchestrated. So I pulled the digital records. Madeline gripped the counter. Sonand. The report was filed from an IP address registered to Kwan Industries, specifically from a terminal in the office of the Chief Financial Officer. Who is the CFO? A man named No Sang-cheol. He has been with Mr. Kwan's organization for 12 years. He is, or was, considered one of Mr. Kwan's most trusted advisors. Madeline's mind raced. Why are you telling me this? You don't owe me anything. A pause. I have a daughter too, Miss Brownie. And what I saw at that estate, the way that little girl held on to you, that wasn't the grip of a child holding a stranger. That was the grip of a child holding a lifeline. Another pause. I thought you should know who's trying to cut it. The line disconnected. Madeline stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, and felt the ground shift beneath her feet. No Sang-cheol, Tai-sik's own CFO. Not 12 years of loyalty. And all along, he was the one working to tear everything apart from the inside. But why? She went to Director Shin first. Not Tai-sik. Not yet. She needed facts, not fury. Director Shin listened to everything without interrupting. Then she closed her office door, sat down, pulled up something on her laptop, and was quiet for a full 3 minutes. No Sang-cheol, Director Shin finally said, has been transferring funds from 3 of Mr. Kwan's subsidiary accounts into a holding company in Singapore. Small amounts, spread over 18 months. The total is considerable. He's been stealing from Tai-sik, stealing, and covering his tracks. But if someone like you, someone with no connection to the business, was brought into the household, and someone Tai-sik trusted enough to resolve their visa issue through legal channels, that process would create a paper trail. Auditors, lawyers reviewing Kwan Industries records. It would only be a matter of time before someone stumbled onto the discrepancies. Madeline felt dizzy. So the immigration report wasn't about getting rid of me because I'm foreign. It was about getting rid of me before the legal process exposed his theft. Precisely. And the figure in the garden, the one Seo Yun saw, Director Shin's expression darkened. I think it was a warning, meant for you, to scare you into leaving on your own. Well, it didn't work. No, it didn't. Director Shin looked at her with something that might have been admiration. Are you always this stubborn? My mother says it's my best and worst quality. I'm inclined to agree with her. They told Tai-sik that evening. Madeline, Director Shin, and Jae-won sat across from him in his office, while Director Shin laid out the evidence, the IP trace, the financial discrepancies, the timeline. She was clinical, precise, merciless in her detail. She presented it the way a surgeon presents a diagnosis. No emotion, just facts. Tai-sik listened to all of it without a word. When Director Shin finished, the room was silent for what felt like an eternity. Then Tai-sik spoke. One sentence. Low. Controlled. But carrying a weight that made the air in the room feel thin. Bring him here. Tai-sik, Madeline started. Not for what you think, he said, meeting her eyes. And there it was again. That crack in the wall. That glimpse of the man underneath the title. You asked me not to hurt anyone because of you. I heard you. But he will answer for this, in front of me, with words. And then the law will handle the rest." Madeline studied his face. He meant it. She could tell, not because he was incapable of the other path, but because he was choosing this one, for her. "Okay," she said. No Sang Cheol was brought to the estate the next morning. He was a thin man in his 50s, with wire-rimmed glasses and the look of someone who had spent his entire career behind a desk. When he walked into Tai-Sik's office and saw Madeline sitting there, his face went white. Not because of Tai-Sik, not because of Jae-won, who stood by the door like a statue. Because of her, the woman he had tried to erase, still here, still sitting in this house, still unbroken. The confrontation was not loud. There was no shouting, no overturned furniture, no dramatic speeches. Tai-Sik simply presented the evidence, asked Sang Cheol to explain, and waited. Sang Cheol tried. He stuttered through excuses. He didn't know about the immigration report. The funds were a misunderstanding. Someone must have used his terminal. Each excuse thinner than the last, each one dissolving under the weight of Director Shin's meticulous records. Finally, he broke. "I was afraid," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I made mistakes with the money, gambling debts, bad investments. I was going to replace it. I swear I was going to replace it. But then she arrived." He pointed at Madeline. "And you started the visa process, and lawyers were going to look at everything, and I panicked." "I panicked, Tai-Sik. I've been loyal for 12 years. Loyal men do not endanger children," Tai-Sik said. His voice was quiet, terrifyingly quiet. "You hired someone to stand in my garden at night. My daughter saw them. My daughter, who was already taken from me once, screamed because of what you did." Sang Cheol had no answer for that. "Leave," Tai-Sik said. "Your employment is terminated. The evidence has been forwarded to the Financial Crimes Division. What happens next is between you and the law." Sang Cheol left. And just like that, it was over. No violence, no revenge, just truth, consequence, and a door closing behind a man who had gambled everything and lost. That evening, Seo-Yun insisted on a celebration. She didn't know what they were celebrating. Madeline told her it was a good day, but she demanded cookies, hot cocoa, Dehan dancing in the living room. Director Shin, to everyone's astonishment, agreed to one dance. Mrs. Yu clapped along from the kitchen doorway. Jae-won, who had never been seen smiling in the entire history of the estate, was caught tapping his foot. General the Cat watched from the top of the bookshelf with supreme indifference. And Tai-Sik stood at the edge of the room, watching Madeline spin his daughter in circles, while Seo-Yun shrieked with laughter. And the look on his face was one that Madeline would remember for the rest of her life. It was the look of a man seeing something he thought he'd never have again. Joy, in his own house, in his own life. Madeline set Seo-Yun down. The girl immediately ran to grab General, who did not appreciate it, and walked over to Tai-Sik. "You're not dancing," she said. "Then I don't dance. Everyone dances. Not Korean Mafia bosses. Especially Korean Mafia bosses. Come on." She held out her hand. He looked at it, then at her, then at Seo-Yun, who had given up on General and was now spinning in circles by herself, dizzy and delighted. He took her hand. They didn't really dance. It was more of a sway, an awkward, gentle, slightly ridiculous sway in the middle of a living room full of cookie crumbs and crayon drawings and the sound of a 5-year-old singing off-key. But their hands stayed intertwined, and neither of them let go. Later that night, after the cookies were eaten, the cocoa was drunk. Seo-Yun was asleep with her rabbit, and the house was quiet. Madeline stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the snowy garden. A knock at the door. Soft. She opened it. Tai-Sik stood in the hallway, mind still in his clothes from the evening, hands at his sides. He looked, for the first time since she'd known him, nervous. "I wanted to tell you something," he said. And I wanted to say it while I still had the courage, because I've been facing down rivals and threats and crises for 15 years, and none of them scared me as much as this. Madeline leaned against the doorframe. I'm listening. When you walked into that convenience store carrying my daughter, a child you had never met in a country that hasn't always been kind to you, you did something no one else in this city would have done. You gave away your warmth, literally, in the middle of winter. For a stranger. He paused, took a breath. And then you came into our lives and gave Seo Yun something I couldn't give her, no matter how hard I tried. You gave her someone to trust. You gave her laughter. You gave her songs in a language she doesn't understand, and she doesn't care, because it's your voice, and your voice means safe. Madeline's eyes were burning. She blinked hard. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, between the nightmares and the tea parties and the plantains and the crayon drawings, you gave me something too. What? She whispered. A reason to come home. The hallway was quiet. The snow fell outside. Somewhere in the house, General knocked something off a table, because that's what General did. Tae-sik, Madeline's voice caught. She pressed her hand against her chest, as if she could hold everything in. I came to this country with nothing. I had a plan. Work, survive, send money home. Don't get attached. Don't get comfortable. Like, don't let anyone close, because close means it hurts more when it's taken away. And then your daughter grabbed my coat and wouldn't let go. And then you said my name like it mattered. And now I'm standing here in this impossible house, in this impossible life, and She stopped, swallowed, started again. I don't want to be temporary anymore, Tae-sik. I want to stay. Not because of the house or the visa or the safety, because of her, and because of you. He stepped forward, not close enough to touch, just close enough that she could see his eyes, dark, deep, and for once, completely unguarded. Then stay, he said. Not as a caretaker, not as an employee. Stay because this is your home, because Seo Yun is your family, because I am asking you, not as a man with power, but as a man who hasn't felt this way since before the world broke, to stay. Is that a business proposal, Mr. Kwan? She was smiling through the tears now, and so was he. A real smile, the kind that remade his entire face, that turned the storm into sunlight. It is the opposite of a business proposal, Miss Brownie. Good, because my answer is yes. He reached out and took her hand, the same hand she had offered him during the dance, and held it. Gently, carefully, like it was something precious. My mother is going to have a lot of questions, Madeline said. So is mine. Mine will want to video call. She'll cry. She'll say she's not crying. She'll definitely be crying. Mine will ask if you can cook Korean food. I'll learn. You don't have to. I want to. I want her to like me. She already likes you. Yeah, I told her about you 3 weeks ago. She sent a gift. It's been in my office because I didn't know how to give it to you without this conversation. Madeline laughed. What is it? A scarf? Hand-knitted. It's bright orange. I love it already. They stood there, hand in hand, in the hallway of a house that had once felt too big, too cold, too full of ghosts, and now, for the first time in a very long time, felt exactly right. 3 months later, Madeline's visa was approved. Permanent residency. Legal. Official. No more hiding. No more fear. No more counting the days. Director Shin personally delivered the letter to her room with a handwritten note that read, Congratulations. You've earned this. D. Shin. Seo Yun made a drawing to commemorate the occasion. It showed 3 people holding hands. A tall woman with long braids, a shorter man with dark hair, and a tiny girl in the middle. Above their heads, in wobbly crayon letters, she had written one word. Family. Madeline framed it. It hung in the sunroom, right where the light hit it in the mornings, right where everyone could see it. Tae-sik pretended not to get emotional when he first saw it. He failed. Mrs. Yu pretended not to notice him wiping his eyes. She also failed. Jaewon saw everything and said nothing, because that was what Jaewon did. And General the cat sat in the sunbeam beneath the drawing and purred, entirely unimpressed by the whole affair, which was really the most general thing he could have done. Yoon Sai-ri dropped her custody case 2 months after Sang Cheol's arrest. She showed up at the estate one afternoon, unannounced, and asked to see Seo Yun. Madeline let her in. She watched Se-ri sit on the floor with her niece, coloring together, talking softly. She saw the way Se-ri's hands trembled when Seo Yun hugged her. She saw the tears Se-ri tried to hide. Afterward, at the door, Se-ri turned to Madeline. "I was wrong about you," she said. "I thought you were. I don't know what I thought, but I was wrong. You wanted to protect your niece. I understand that. You're better at it than I am. I'm not better. I'm just here, and I'm not leaving." Se-ri nodded. Then quietly, "My sister would have liked you." It was the kindest thing anyone had ever said to Madeline. She held it close, like a jewel, like a warm coat on a cold night. "Thank you," she whispered. Se-ri left, but she came back, for visits, for holidays, for birthdays, and she became the aunt who brought too many presents, and stayed too late, and always argued with Tae-sik about politics at the dinner table, which Madeline found secretly hilarious. They became, against all odds, a family. A strange, unlikely, beautiful family. And on the anniversary of the night Madeline found Seo Yun in the alley, they returned to that same street in Incheon, all 3 of them. The electronics shop had become a bakery. The noodle restaurant was still there, though it had a new coat of paint. The alley was just an alley. Narrow, ordinary, unremarkable. Seo Yun, now 6, stood between them, holding both their hands, looking around with the calm curiosity of a child who didn't quite remember this place but knew it mattered. "This is where Uni found me," she asked. "This is where Uni found you," Tae-sik confirmed. And she gave me her coat. She gave you her coat." Seo Yun looked up at Madeline. "Why?" Madeline crouched down, the way she had on that freezing night 1 year ago, and looked into those big, bright, no longer frightened eyes. "Because you were cold, little one, and I had something warm. And sometimes—" She glanced up at Tae-sik, who was watching them with that look, the one that made the world feel smaller and brighter and infinitely more possible. "Sometimes, when you give away the thing you need most, you end up finding everything you didn't know you were looking for." Seo Yun considered this with the deep seriousness that only 6-year-olds possess. "Like a family?" she asked. Madeline smiled. "Exactly like a family." Seo Yun nodded, satisfied. Then she tugged both their hands and said, "Can we get hotdog now? And I'm hungry." Tae-sik guffawed, the kind that turned heads on the street, the kind that Madeline had been collecting like treasures since the first time she heard it. "We can get hotdog," he said. And they walked down the street together, the Cameroonian woman, the Korean man, and the little girl between them, into the warm glow of the city lights, into a life that neither of them had planned, but both of them had chosen, into a future that was imperfect and uncertain, and absolutely, completely, wonderfully theirs. From a green coat, a freezing alley, and one brave woman, that single decision changed 3 lives forever. And every story on this channel carries that same heart, that same moment where everything shifts and nothing is ever the same. Subscribing takes less than a second, but what you get back are stories that make you laugh, and tighten your chest and make you believe kindness can crack open the biggest doors. Tap subscribe, tap that bell, because what's coming next is something you do not want to miss.